All right, what is up, nerds? Doc Brass here. We're going to be going through another tutorial. So I wanted to start getting back into these from a more foundational basis to help people on some what I would consider to be some really nice creative fundamentals, right? And so the purpose of this tutorial is to go through what I would consider to be the different drum compositions, right? And this is going to be the simple version, as we'll call it, right? Where we're going to take simple techniques and simple rudiments, but really express how the way that we choose, the way that we compose the drum rhythms, can really change the way that the feel of the song is going to be. And that way, if you're playing songs with a certain type of vibe, you can really still compose your drum patterns while finger drumming and make them feel more organic or more complex, if you will, while still maintaining a very simple approach. Okay. So to start this off, since I only have one stand, which is being used for my camera, and I'm holding the microphone, we're going to talk about this philosophically for a minute, and then I'm going to have the second half of the video be me performing these different rudiments in sequence so that you guys can take time to watch and go through and express what I'm talking about. And then maybe finish it off with another dialogue after analyzing this, right? So philosophically speaking, right, when we're talking about simple drum techniques, we're talking about stuff that you can even, for more advanced players, might be able to play with one hand, where we are just using our kick, snare, our hat, our open hi-hat, right? So kick, snare, hat, open hi-hat. And as we're going through these, we're not really going to be adding any other complexities such as shakers or rides just quite yet, right? What we're going to be going over is how we play these instruments and how drummers normally perceive them, or maybe based off the genre. So a common element that is being used in hip hop is consistent eighth note hi-hats, right? So most often you'll hear something, and pardon me if I mess up as I'm doing this with one hand and a microphone in my other, but you're going to be doing a consistent eighth note hi-hat and what would consider to be a boom bap pattern. So boom, bap, boom, boom, bap, right? So and that would be a basic pattern, right, for boom bap. Now, the eighth note hi-hat is something that it is usually ends up being consistent, right, because it's kind of like the main metronome and it's the main counter, and the MC will normally be really having their rhymes on the 1, 2, 3, 4, right, not so much on the in-betweens. And the hi-hat kind of acts as that metronome. But what we're going to be focusing on here is to just maybe instead of eighth notes, quarter note, right? And with that pattern, it's a much more open environment since the hats are normally falling on the kicks and the snare, right? There isn't really a lot of opportunity for the hat to speak for itself, if you will, right? And it allows there to be an open space. That is a very big fundamental change just in terms of how you want to perceive tempo. Obviously, if we wanted to build back up that track and we're going... right? And so obviously the buildup of the hi-hat now has a perceived higher tempo to it, right? And so that is going to be really important when trying to detail little accents now, right? Because now we can add an open hi-hat. Same thing with an eighth note, right? So... So now just adding one open hi-hat in these patterns now accents a whole new eccentricity, right? And you can do just 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Kind of like an off hi-hat. So, oh, right. Actually, let me turn my microphone down. Now there I just wanted to explore some of the other options that you can see in terms of maybe changing to a lower tempo quarter note, and just using basic booms and baps into how we wanted to play. But as you can see, these are completely different sounding rudiments or patterns using the same three instruments, right? And so what I wanted to go over here is this. Now, normally when we're finger drumming, we are using both our left and our right hands, right? And when it comes down to having that level of opportunity, it's easier for people to then imagine playing their eighth note or their quarter note with their right hand, and then playing their kicks and their snares with their left, right? Or vice versa if you are a lefty in this case, right, where you will probably be playing your metronome with your left hand and then you're kicking your snare with your right. But regardless, we're talking about having two hands available in this case, right? And the reason why that's important is because it allows you to really try and think about what you want to focus on. If you have enough muscle memory to where you can play the hi-hat while with one hand while playing your kick and snare with another one, you already have a foundational setup of muscle memory where you can tell your brain, just worry about this hi-hat right now so I can think about what I want to do with these two, right? So to play on that concept and allow you to expand yourself, we're not looking to really do anything too crazy, but I'm now going to go through and play a bunch of different beats and with different variations, and we're going to do it in like every 8 bars, right? So 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So call it a 16, right? And as we go through, I will then change up different ways that you can play them. And all I'm going to use is just the kick, the kick, snare, hat, and open hi-hat. And we're going to see just and only simple techniques. I'm not going to try and do any kind of third stuff, nothing too crazy where we're doing like a right throughout that, nothing quite like that, right? We're going to be trying to keep it very, very simple, but really show how many different opportunities there are here. All right. All right, so now that we've kind of gone through some of these options, right, let's try and analyze some of them. If we were to ask ourselves and go back and watch, ask yourself how many times the snare is hitting on a hi-hat. The answer is going to be about 80% of the time. Most of the time, because we're dealing with a lot of quarter notes and eighth notes, they will always be on a 1, 2, 3, 4. If anything, it's on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And as we're going through that, it's okay to then realize that a lot of these notes are going to be hitting each other at the same time. And that means that when you want to do more simple stuff, that you're not actually changing up the complex measure. The most complicated thing I was doing in those is what was referred to as the double tap, where I will do something like a right. So all of those like 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 2 2, right? Those are double taps as I refer to them. And there's another tutorial that you can go watch on performing those. And I find that even subtracting out the double tap concept, you can even see a lot of like boom, 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 got, right? And that double tap is a lot easier to do for people than some might be doing like a boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-bop. Sorry for that big clip. But yeah, so the idea here is now thinking about, okay, well, if a lot of these are landing on the hi-hat notes, well, then what other different combinations, what kind of combos can I come up with to that are still going to have that composition, right? The way that I was just doing a full eighth note to then really breaking down to just a quarter note, if you listen to how the open hi-hat sounds during a quarter note pattern as opposed to an eighth note pattern, you'll notice that it's not going to, it doesn't close as quickly, right? So it'll be like, right? Right? There's that a quick open and close. But if we do quarter note, obviously the hi-hat gets to ring out more, right, in itself. And the reason why that's important, of course, is that it allows you to really feel open certain compositions. And just to, in case you're wondering why that is, remember, these are on a mute group. So both of these are on mute group 1, so that way if I play another one at the same time, they will choke each other. So I can never play these two at the exact same time, right? You see how that works? So that way, if I press the open hi-hat at all. So that's just a refresher on how that works. But think about the times where I'm doing a kick and then the snare and open hi-hat at the same time with a... Right? So those patterns are very attractive. There are many places where you could put that kind of a pattern, in, and it would be for a specific vibe that you're going for, right? You can put into context videos of mine where I will do for a transition. I'll just do a like this kind of thing. That kind of pattern is great for just kind of like getting ready. Boom, 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 gop. Boom, 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 got. And then we go into a big breakdown and then bring in other instrumentations based off of the melody, right? Yeah, so really going through this, I'm going to go now after doing a little analysis on those patterns, I'll go back and I'll play some more other variations, and that way you can kind of start to get those creative juices flowing. Start to really ask yourself, okay, wow, these really are just incorporating these 4 notes. We're not getting into rides, we're not getting into shakers, tambourines, claps, nothing out of the ordinary there. We're just sticking to the primary, and just how many different ways you can make a feeling and a tempo be perceived inside of your music. That way you aren't feeling like you're always bound by this same kind of similar patterns where, and I'm just going to use an example. I'm not trying to call anyone out here negatively, right? So if we are doing things like sticking with this kind of thing, or just a doot 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 doot, right? Just that kind of eighth note. But most commonly you'll hear like a, and instead of a ride, it'll be just a hi-hat, an open hi-hat. So instead of that, it'll be. And that's all fine and dandy, but I feel like, especially in the hip-hop domain, because there is always that foundational setting, it is an overused pattern, and it's something that we really want to try and break away from. Don't let the hi-hat speak the same way every single time. You don't hear a drummer always doing the same kind of notation unless they're trying to keep a specific rhythm for a certain break. They're usually trying to do maybe some off-hat kind of hits or trying to have a very composed riff, right? And that's what we're really talking about again here, is composing the riff and trying to break out of those old habits. All right, so let's get back into it. All right. So one thing I just want to point out was some of the what might have felt like swing that was happening on here, right? Doot, 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 doot. Those kinds of things, if you noticed earlier, they were actually monochromatic. And what that means is that I was never hitting more than one at the same time for the most part. I would do like a... all of those notes are being hit. There's no multiple notes, right? So that would be monochromatic. Or monophonic, if you will. Sorry, monophonic. But with that said, it makes those kinds of notations a lot easier. And when you think about then playing a monophonic style sound versus polyphonic, now you're talking about a whole different way of composing your beats, right? So now you can do things like... right? And each time just having fun, going between notes how you want to. And each one of those can be different. But here's where I'm going to kind of settle in this final bit. Whatever you write, the goal is to repeat it. And that's where people are going to notice the level of complication or composition that you've put in. So if you're going to have a... be able to repeat that pattern. It's a unique pattern to itself. And then you can repeat that pattern with your samples and however you're playing. And then that way it is like, oh, that's not just him jamming, or that's not just them jamming. Sorry. It's also about, the composition is, oh, they're doing that on purpose. So they really wanted to do... right? It feels composed in that regard. So the ability to not just experiment outside of the normal rhythms, but then be able to find a composition that you will repeat for that break is can be a great stepping stone for getting yourself more comfortable with these more unique patterns. patterns and more unique compositions. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful in this little experimentation, little explanation as to more simple composed drumming. We'll start getting into more advanced stuff later, but I also want to make sure that we do a lot of foundational work and really get everybody working on a similar level. All right. In the comments below, feel free to leave your thoughts, any questions, future tutorials that you would like to see on these kinds of things. So thank you all for your support and have a wonderful day.